As tensions rise and the media press for red lines, what historical context is missing from the discussion? Is the North Korean government simply irrational and belligerent, or are historical forces behind Pyongyang's behavior? I toss this question to Mark Selden, Senior Research Associate in the East Asia program at Cornell University. Here's his answer.
Well, the main story is that the Korean War has been going on for 7 decades. A small, weak North Korea faces the most powerful country in the world. We're still at war, and we have a new leadership that, continuing the policies of the former leader, but possibly jacking them up a notch or two, we're exerting extremely strong pressure and threats on North Korea. They have one weapon to deal with us, and it's one that we encouraged them to develop over the last decade by abandoning previous efforts to reach a peace agreement in the Korean War. That's their nuclear weapons. And what we know from the experience of these decades is that every time they're faced with major threats from the United States or the United States and South Korea or the United States and Japan and South Korea, as they are at the moment, their approach is to test again and to make clear that they are a player in the nuclear weapons realm. So, of course, they're feeling the pressure doubly at the moment. They're feeling it doubly because of Vice President Pence's trip to South Korea. They're feeling it because Trump has just unleashed his super bomb, but not his nuclear bomb in Syria. They're feeling it because Trump is talking about North Korea as crazy and also as the biggest threat.
Yeah, and we hear a lot about the U.S. sending a message to North Korea. We heard that last week when Trump used the mother of all bombs without remembering that the U.S. has sent a pretty strong message to Korea. Can you give some context as to the devastation that was brought on the Korean Peninsula during that war?
Well, the devastation, especially not just the Korean Peninsula, but especially in North Korea, was so devastating that we left not a single 2-story building in the entire country. If you look at Pyongyang now, you see that it's a big city. In the 1950s, everywhere throughout the country was destroyed. Not only buildings, but we also went after dikes. And in general, we wrought havoc. It's easy to forget this because there's no talk about the Korean War in all of the current discourse in the official media.
Why is that?
It's only about, well, because the central line of the Trump administration is that these people are crazy. They're unreal, and they have to be stopped at all costs. And the American media has, including the major media, has accepted this approach without much question. It typically does.
President Obama signaled a greater U.S. role in the region through the so-called Asia pivot. Where did that take the U.S., and where has Trump pivoted the pivot, if you could explain?
Yeah. Well, Obama talked about an Asia pivot. He didn't do very much pivoting. He did shift the U.S. Navy from 60-40 in the Atlantic to 60-40 in the Pacific. In other words, concentrating our naval and air force in that region. What he mainly did, I think, is that he declined to follow the previous Democratic administration. There was a Bush administration in between, but the Clinton administration had invested heavily in trying to reach a settlement with North Korea. This was the 6-party talks hosted by China involving the 2 Koreas, Japan, the United States, and Russia. They were on the verge of an agreement, but he decided it would have to be the next administration that would have to ratify it if it was going to go ahead. So it was never signed. So we've been more than a decade without any significant negotiations between the 2 countries. But meanwhile, a lot of threats in both directions, to be sure. But since the American genius is to fight our wars thousands of miles from home. This threat, it weighs very heavily on the Koreans and perhaps doesn't weigh quite so heavily on us, especially since while they're developing nuclear weapons, they haven't yet developed the ability to reach the United States. They may do that.
We're running low on time, but I want to get your thought on one last question. If the U.S. was really concerned with promoting peace in the region, what would the right path be to take?
Well, the U.S. is talking about getting China to pressure North Korea, but it's not talking about a peace treaty. It's not talking about an end to the Korean War. It's not talking about U.S. guarantees that it will not attempt to overthrow the North Korean government, which has been in power since the 1940s. One family, three dynasties, you could say, or three parts of one dynasty. So my view is that those are the issues that provide a basis for negotiation. And it's my view that the North Koreans have a heavy stake in reaching an agreement based on what I've just said, plus the provision of oil and other energy to convince them that they don't need atomic weapons. Will they agree to such a deal? Well, we can't say for sure they will. They don't trust us any more than we trust them, of course. What we can say is that they were prepared to do that in the past. They could be prepared to do it at present.
And we've learned that it has worked in recent years, such negotiations in other countries, at least. A little precedent's been set. Professor Mark Selden, Senior Research Associate in the East Asia Program at Cornell University, thank you for providing some history there that's often missing from the conversation.